Essentially, it gives you the tools to handle pressure, manage your stress triggers, take control of your emotions and your mind. It increases your happiness. It allows you to display higher levels of emotional intelligence. It allows you to focus on you. And then the smaller knock-on effects in that is you'll be able to focus on the things that you want to focus on. And that is why you need to start this journey of mental resilience today. Hi guys, it's JT here and welcome to the JT Leadership Podcast. A podcast where I take everyday challenges, simplify them and provide you with the tools to overcome any challenge. This podcast has one outcome, and that is to have a positive impact on your life by bringing leadership to your life. Season 2 of the JT Leadership Podcast is about a very important message. It is about something that affects every single one of us, and that is the importance of mental well-being. Throughout this season, I will be discussing why mental well-being is so important and some of the steps that you can take to help build a mentally resilient mind. Things that I've done, tools that I've done and seen other people do, which have had a profound impact and changed our lives. In Season 1, I discussed how leadership is not just for CEOs, businessmen and women, and high-level managers. The abilities and skills that are demonstrated in everyday leaders can apply to your life. And these can apply to building a mentally resilient mind as well. Today's episode will be the first part of a 2-part series in this season about the journey to mental resilience. I will explore exactly what I believe mental resilience is and some of the tools that you can use to get there. I will also be discussing some of the factors that you can control, things that affect us in everyday life, such as stress and pressure. As always in my episodes, I like to break down these complex problems and simplify them, and the way I do that is by tackling a series of questions. So that you know what I'm focusing on, I'm going to go through a series of 5 questions today. Question 1. Why do you need to start the journey to mental resilience now? What exactly is mental resilience? What is the difference between stress and pressure? Why can pressure be good for you? And then question 5. What are the steps to managing stress and pressure? Before I proceed, I just want to make it very clear that I'm not a medical practitioner in any shape or form. I've spent the last decade, if not more, working with various types of people, meeting hundreds of different types of people, working professionals, colleagues, friends, and the reason I wanted to tackle this today was because it's such an important issue in the world today. It affects so many people. If you listen to episode 1, you would have seen some of the incredible stats that I put out there. Something like 450 million people are affected today. Some of these stats shocked me. For example, here I have another one here. Globally, in 2018, 15.4 million people were off work due to an illness which was related to stress, depression or anxiety. To bring that to scale, if you had an organization of 600 people, that means one person per week would go off with either stress, anxiety or depression. I mean, it's so obvious now. It's out there. It affects every single one of us, which is why I felt this episode was so important. This season was so important for me to be able to share some of the tools that I've learned, developed, worked with other people, and as have helped me over the last 10 years. Before I really get into the meat and bones of question 1, I want to share with you a little story about myself. Now, years ago, I was going through a period where I felt I was demotivated, I was lost, I didn't know what my purpose was, what my meaning was in this life. I was constantly comparing myself to others. I wasn't really focusing on me. Now, a lot of people might think of that as general mental pressures of society today. Now, you might not think that this is what you would normally class as stress, depression or anxiety. But I feel that most people suffer or experience this type of mental pressure or mental stress. And this goes on to lead to bigger problems such as being medically classed as stressed or depressed, which can lead to medications, which can lead to further problems down the line. I'm a firm believer that big problems generally have a root cause, which has started from something very small. Often it could go back to the way we were raised, our upbringing, or it could be a small spark in our workplace that has created a snowball effect of bigger problems. One of the most important ways I discovered to get out of this headspace was to start to put myself first. So investing in myself, researching, learning, putting myself out there, putting myself out of my comfort zone. And what this allowed me to start discovering is that as people, we are all different, but same in one way. We are designed to look at what's wrong. Our body, our brain is designed to pick out everything that's wrong around us to try and protect us. As people and as humans, we are designed to be affected by external factors. Hundreds or thousands of years ago, this would have been a threat from a bigger animal or disease. Now, in developing worlds, those things are less of a problem. I believe that the problem nowadays is mental pressures and being mentally affected by external factors. And if there's no problems, our brain really doesn't know what to do and it starts to find problems. We start to pick holes in every little thing. And most importantly, our brains aren't designed to deal with the mental pressures of today. They're designed to focus on 1, 2, or maybe maximum 3 things at a time. Today there are so many external influences. For example, there's social media, the constant comparison with other people that we don't even know. If you know the phrase, this is the keeping up with the Joneses, seeing someone on Instagram and thinking they're having a great holiday or they're driving this amazing new car which is really, really expensive and they're showing us how they've made all this money. But in actuality, we have no idea what's going on in their lives. We now experience instant gratification where our seniors and the older generations had to work and wait for things. Even when I was a child, if I wanted something, I would have to ask my parents and they wouldn't give it to me straight away. Or we would have to get in the car, drive somewhere to go and then pick out something that I wanted as a gift. Now, we can just pull up our phones, go onto something like Amazon, order something, click, one click buys, and things are at our door within 24 hours. I also feel that there are greater pressures from parents, school, and work to be the perfect person because this is something that's plastered everywhere with advertising. The world is like advertising on steroids. Everywhere you look, there's a picture of perfection. And people constantly compare you or you compare yourself to this imaginary fake person that's seen who goes to the gym, that reads, that works, that looks good, that looks after the family, that earns really well, has all this time in the world, has no problems whatsoever with their life. And you have to try and compare to that, when in actual fact, that doesn't exist. Something that we're not taught in school is how to deal with all this pressure, all these external influences. As I've mentioned to you guys before, I work in a demanding industry, and some of the pressures in that industry are so high that it's led to high suicide rates. People have completely quit, broken down, left their careers because pressures are so high in that industry and so demanding. Earlier when I spoke about my story, when I started to put myself first, this is when I started to say, I need to find a way to deal with this. I said to myself, I will not go on for the rest of my life in whatever I do being influenced by all these external things that are going on and not being able to take control. So I started to research. I started to think, what do great leaders do? What do successful businessmen do? What do the CEOs in my company do? How do they deal with these pressures? I started to then look at people around me, what people are affected, what are they doing, and then what are they not doing? If you've read my book, Managers Are Not Leaders, one of the core areas I talk about is using the experience of others. Part of that is learning what not to do from other people. By absorbing all this information, knowledge, experience, it led me to the journey of mental resilience. Essentially, mental resilience is a way to control these external influences. Because if we let the external influences control our emotions, they drive our behaviors. And mental resilience allows us to control our emotions when we feel that we're in control by the external influences. In reality, you cannot control the external influences. They're always going to be there. But what you can do is control your emotions. But why do all this? What is the point of building a mentally resilient mind? Essentially, it gives you the tools to handle pressure, manage your stress triggers, take control of your emotions and your mind. It increases your happiness. It allows you to display higher levels of emotional intelligence. It allows you to focus on you. And then the smaller knock-on effects in that is you'll be able to focus on the things that you want to focus on. And that is why you need to start this journey of mental resilience today. Now, I keep saying these two words, mental resilience. I've described to you the benefits, why you need to do it, what it allows you to do. But if you was to Google mental resilience, there is no real definition. Earlier when I discussed that I was on this journey to mental resilience, I needed to discover what exactly it was. And I realised that there is no real definition. I felt so strongly about this area that I went to an organisation that I work with and said, I want to do a talk to all the employees here. As many people that want to turn up and learn about this topic, I want to do a talk about it. And that's when I decided that in order to make this simple, I need to come up with a definition which I feel captures mental resilience in a nutshell. Our mind is a wonderful thing. It can be pushed, stretched, kicked. It can relax. It's always active. It could be pushed and bounce back. When I got to understand this, it made me think, okay, well, how can mental resilience tie into this and how can this link into our mind? And that's when I came up with the definition of mental resilience. Mental resilience is the elasticity of your mind. It is how far your mind can be pushed, stretched, and bounce back to its normal way of operating. As always, I want this to apply to your real life. So remember the word elasticity. For example, you go to work one day and you're in a really high pressured, it's a toxic environment. People are demanding things left, right and centre. You walk in, you're bombarded by emails, you're bombarded by questions. Immediately your mind is being impacted by external influences. It's being stretched, it's being pushed. Your mind, you may not even be awake yet, but your mind is being pushed and stretched. Now, you could be pulled towards stress, towards pressure. Imagine it this way. Your mind is being elasticated. It's being pulled like a rubber band, pulled across. Now, there's tools that you can use so that you can bring that back to its normal shape. So imagine that rubber band. You pull it and then you stretch it. And then you bring it back slowly. You don't just let go. You don't over pull it so it stretches and snaps. That is the point of mental resilience. Again, take for example a home life where you might be having money pressures or you're getting married and you think, where are we going to find this money to pay for our wedding? We're also trying to save up for a new house. There's a lot going on. And when you're thinking about this, again, now imagine this elastic band. As you're stretching it and you're pulling it, you do not want it to get to that point where it snaps. You want to be able to implement tools or take steps so that you could slowly bring that elastic band back to its normal shape. And here's what I love about this analogy. If you take an elastic band and you stretch it slowly and bring it back to its normal shape again and again, time and time again, what happens to that rubber is it begins to slowly stretch, but then the normal shape of that rubber and that elastic band starts to grow. It starts to get slightly bigger. This is like your mind. If you can stretch and pull your mind, but then bring it back to its normal mode of operation, and then do it again and again and again and again, slowly your mind will grow. It will develop. This will become easier for you. Just like the elastic band, when you stretch it and pull it and bring it back to its normal shape, as you stretch it again the next time, it becomes easier and it can stretch back easier. So just remember that mental resilience is the elasticity of your mind. You know what, before I move on to question 3, I just love that analogy of the elastic band and the elasticity of our mind. As I see myself on this journey towards leadership and growth, I always see my mind as elastic. If I can push and stretch it, I will grow and I will become a better version of myself over time. And that's exactly what I want for you. Now, question 3, the difference between stress and pressure. Often, I find that pressure and stress are categorized as the same, both with a negative energy surrounding it. I don't see it that way. I believe pressure can be healthy for you, and stress is something that we want to stay away from. As I discussed earlier, when I went through a phase where I was demotivated, I wasn't myself. I essentially was in what you could call a stress category. I had a lack of sleep. I probably had a breakdown in relationships. I wasn't connecting as well as I should have been. I was having negative thoughts, which then led on to physical issues because I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't exercising as much. I was becoming less flexible. I was putting on weights. We all know that stress is bad for us. However, in my experience, and we're working with hundreds of different types of people, we fall into a stress category because of our own doing. We allow pressure, which comes first, to turn into stress. And this is because we look at pressure in a bad way. We portray pressure as a bad element of our life that we need to avoid, that pressure is not good for us. I want you to look at this a little bit differently. I want you to look at pressure as a good element in your life, and you can start to manage the pressure category. On my website, pmgrowth.co, it's my personal blog. I've written a detailed blog about the split between pressure, stress, stretch and strain, and where we feel comfortable as humans and where we grow, where we get bored. Essentially, the ideal place for us to be as people is where we are slightly stretched, where our minds are just outside of our comfort zone. Not too far outside of our comfort zone because that's where stress kicks in and we might not be able to deal with that as much, but just outside of our comfort zone, where it falls under the pressure category. If you spend most of your time in this category of pressure where you're slightly stretched, slightly uncomfortable, this brings about an increased sense of motivation, drive, and fulfillment. For example, again, bring this back to your life. If you're running a business or you're running a project at work and you feel, I'm under pressure because I want to do well. And you want to do well because there is a slight element of fear that you don't want to fail. Now, instead of looking at that in a negative way, we can look at that in a good way. A healthy dose of fear increases the satisfaction, and that's where pressure comes from. That little element of fear increases the pressure, and that pressure allows us to perform, and it allows us to be motivated, driven, commitment, excited. It gives us good levels of anxiety. Now, this is where my view might be a little bit different to the traditional view. People, again, paint anxiety in a bad light. And one of the episodes later in the season, I actually discuss anxiety and the tools I use to overcome anxiety. But bringing this back to this topic, anxiety can be good for us. So, anxiety is stemmed from fear. And if there's a level of fear, but something that we are really want to do, that we're excited about, is that not good? For example, if you're excited that your wedding is coming up and you really, really want it to go well, is that not good level of fear? Good level of anxiety? If you have a big project coming up and you want it to go so well, you're going to present to 30, 40 people, or if you're going to go speak in an audience of 200-300 people, but you want it to go so well, is that not a good level of anxiety? A good level of fear? Only if we use it in the right way. Only if we use the tools for mental resilience to allow ourselves to control the emotions and don't let the emotions control us. That's why this journey to mental resilience is so important. Okay, so now you're probably listening to me and thinking, okay, yeah, pressure's good for me, great, but I'm under pressure. How do I stop that becoming stress? Well, you're in luck because that's what I'm going to go into. I want to share with you now a few tools that you can use in real life. So these are tools that have worked for me. These are tools that have worked for other people that I've learnt from, studied, researched, people that I've worked with, and I've shared these tools with them. I've actually had people say to me, wow, that tool has allowed me to view my work environment in a completely different way. I want you to remember this. Negative consequences from pressure are often self-inflicted. We often put this undue pressure upon ourselves. Now I want you to remember a time where you've done that to yourself. Now you could have been in school going to exams and you're thinking to yourself, I need to do the best I can do. If I don't get an A or if I don't get the highest grade, I'm a failure. You might be thinking that there's this pressure from your parents to do that. But actually, your parents have only ever said to you, we just want you to do your best, to try your hardest. They've never said to you that you're a failure. Again, in the work environment, your boss could have give you a task and then says, do your best, but you put this pressure on yourself to think, well, if I don't do this to the best of my ability, if they're not going to like it, I'm not going to get the promotion. You put this undue pressure upon yourself. And that's where these tools come into play. Now, before I go into the tools, I just want to tell you a bit of a story about how I actually got to these tools and why they actually work. So I went through this exactly same thing. A few years ago, I set up a business with my family, and to be fair, the business didn't do so well. And now I have this goal, this passion to help share knowledge and have a positive impact on the world. But often I put this undue pressure upon myself where I think I need to do more, I need to get myself out there, I need to do this, I need to do that, when I'm actually doing already so much. So I looked back and said, okay, how can I control this pressure? And this got me to a series of steps. Step 1. The start is self-awareness. You need to understand what creates this stress for you. How you feel in a high-pressured environment and how is that turning into stress? Essentially, this is understanding your triggers. So there's a series of questions that I've come up with that can help you get to this point. So if you've got a pen, paper, you've got your laptop, you've got your phone, write these questions down. Actually, I'll share these questions in the show notes so you can just copy and paste them and go through them later. So the first question, when you are in a position of pressure or stress, how does this make you feel? Question 2, why does it make you feel like that? Question 3, what would your life look like if those triggers didn't exist? Question 4, how does that make you feel? Question 5, what would your step to making this happen be? Now, all with this, I want you to imagine what your life would be like, what you would behave like in that scenario if you wasn't putting this negative aura around the issue. And I want you to not just think about it, but try to feel. Put yourself in that point. Close your eyes. Imagine what would it be like if you was to do those things, or if you was to do the opposite of that. If you was to put yourself in that position where there was no issue, no pressure, where you could have total control. Now, so that you can put this into context, I wanted to give you an example. I was once in a high pressure environment where I sat in a meeting with about 20 people. And there was 20 people who were looking for someone to blame. And for my element of work, so I was in control of a large area of works and a big team. So they said, well, what's the easiest scapegoat? Let's try and blame that team. So I had, off that big meeting, about 10 people just bombarding me with questions. What have you done wrong? Why it's your fault? No, we're going to blame you. We've got all this backup and evidence. When actually, in fact, most of it was wrong. But anyway, I was then sitting there and going, okay, what do I do in this situation? Now, this is pressure. Do I explode? Do I start swearing at people? Do I tell people to F off? Do I get up and walk out of the meeting? In my head, internally, whilst this was happening, I remained quiet. And I just quickly went through the series of questions. And I was like, okay, how does this make me feel? Okay, I'm under pressure. Why does it make me feel like that? Okay, because I feel like they're ostracizing me. They're trying to use me as a scapegoat. Okay, now what would I do if I can take this trigger away? Okay, actually, this trigger is my own thoughts. I'm overthinking this. I'm making it out to myself that, well, if I say something wrong, they're all going to blame me for something. When actually, fact, my boss is sat right next to me and he's not blaming me for anything. Okay, so how does that make me feel? Well, actually, if I just come up with an articulated answer, I can turn the situation around and try and make it and move forward. Okay, so what would my next step to make this happen be? Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everyone for the moment to allow me to speak and see how I can move this forward. Now, that took all of about 20 seconds. That can happen in your mind in about 20 to 30 seconds. You can go through these series of questions. Now, I went from a point of feeling high emotion, I could have exploded, to actually, I'm going to take control of my emotions and I'm going to take control of this situation. Not only does that show higher levels of emotional intelligence, but to all the people in the room, they see me as a leader. I've then taken leadership powers and behaviours, things I discussed in season 1, and applied it to that situation. That is why this stuff is so powerful. Step 2. Again, this is self-awareness, but this is awareness of the consequences. For example, you've had a long day at work, you go home, you've got children or your wife or your husband, whoever it is at home, wants to have a conversation with you. You've had a high pressure day, you come home and you ignore them. You do that every day, Monday to Friday. And then on Saturday, you're so tired that you don't even want to speak to them. You just want to chill out, maybe watch some sports or watch a bit of TV or watch a film or whatever it may be. Over time, this will destroy your relationship. And you can definitely agree with me, if you love that person, you do not want that to happen. And this is where awareness of the consequences comes in. Awareness of consequences allows you to understand what your life would be like if you changed your behavior and overcame those consequences. So here's a series of questions. There's 4 questions. And again, pen and paper, I'll put these in the show notes again. Question 1. What negative consequences do your triggers create? How does that make others feel? How do you think others would feel if the consequences created a positive outcome rather than a negative one? How can you bridge the gap from where you are now to where you want to be? So again, bringing this into real life scenarios. So imagine you come home and the negative consequence of the pressure that you've put on yourself is actually pushing people away. It's destroying your relationship. Okay, how does that make others feel? Well, actually, it makes them feel terrible. They want to connect with you. They're sad, they're frustrated, they're angry. All these emotions are happening. Now, how would you feel if you could switch that and create a positive outcome? So instead of completely ignoring them, speak to them. Ask for 5 minutes where you can just calm down, maybe have a shower, come back. If you like to drink, grab a beer, relax, and then have a conversation with them. Do it in a constructive, positive way. And then how can you bridge the gap? Okay, so maybe break down what the steps could be. So you say, okay, you're in the car, you're driving home, and you say, okay, I know they're going to come, they're going to want to speak to me, they're going to want some time with me, so I'm just going to ask for 5 minutes alone, just so I can clear my head. And then perhaps, how can I do this? I could have a shower, maybe you like to meditate, maybe you could breathe, or maybe on the way home you go to the gym, you clear your head and then go home. Those are some examples. But it really needs to apply to your life and your scenario. Which brings me on to step 3, focusing on everything that's good right now. Focusing on the negatives is far too easy. It's far too easy to say that you cannot perform because you're under pressure. It's far too easy to say this is difficult because it's stressful. However, changing your language and looking for the positives in every situation will have a profound impact on where you are now and where you want to be and how you use pressure. For example, so say you own a business, you're running a business, you're 6-7 months in, okay, you're making a little bit of money, but you're not making as much money as you thought you could be. You're perhaps a bit stretched, you're under pressure, you want this to succeed. Part of that pressure could be comparing yourself to others. Perhaps you've seen other people on the internet, you've been to networking groups with your friends, and they're doing a lot better in their business. And then perhaps you're also worried about the future. How are you going to make ends meet? In this step, you focus on everything that's good right now. You take a moment out, you sit down, you look at yourself, and you think, what is everything that's good that's happened to this point? Think about the hardships that you've overcome. Think about the steps that you've made. The fact that you've overcome your fear of setting up a business, to setting up your own business. The fact that you're helping other people. the fact that you have made money to this point, and that changes your perspective. It starts to change the way you look at a situation. Most successful people call this gratitude. They focus on everything that's good that's happened. This allows them to reframe a situation to be good and focus on the positives. With this comes being completely present. In any pressured situation, if you focus on being completely present in that situation. So a little story about myself. One of the first times I'd done a speaking event, it was in front of 30 people. And the second time, it was in front of 300 people in my workplace. Now, I stood up, I did it, and then when I came down, one of my colleagues said to me, "I don't know how you did that. You've just spoken in front of 300 people." And to myself, I looked at it and said, well, actually, it was not so bad. When I reflected on it later, before that, I was a bit worried. Don't get me wrong, I was under pressure. I was sweating a little bit, my breathing got a bit deeper, and I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to worry about them. I'm just going to focus on myself. I'm going to focus on my talk, my little speech, and I'm going to focus on just make sure it's clear, it comes out well, it's well delivered, and that's all I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on, ultimately, being present in that moment. And it became easy. The pressure went away because I was just focused on being present. And that can help you in any pressured situation. If you're having pressure in your relationship, focus on being present with your partner. If you're having pressure in your work or your project, focus on being present right then. Just don't worry about the future. Just worry about being present and what you can do right then. If you're feeling pressure perhaps about your health, if you think that you're not fit enough or you don't look good enough or you can't run that marathon that you want to run, focus on being present about what you can do today that can get you to that point. That's why presence is so important. I spoke a lot about that in season 1, and that is a leadership power, an amazing behavior that can help you change and overcome any tough and high pressured situation. Incredible. So these tools have been so important to me, and I know they've helped other people and they will help you. So the steps: start with self-awareness. Understand your triggers. Number 2, awareness of the consequences. Number 3, focus on everything that's good right now. And then number 4, be completely present in the moment. These steps, these tools will allow you to lead and manage your pressure so that it becomes good, and that you can reframe pressure so that it's seen as a good part of your life and stop you moving into that category of stress. Okay, wow, that's been a powerful episode and one that was very important to me. So as always, I just want to do a quick summary recap of the questions and what we've discussed today. So question 1, why do you need to start this journey of mental resilience now? So we discussed the benefits of this, that it gives you the tools to reframe and handle pressure to stop it becoming stress. It allows you to manage your stress triggers, become happier, control your emotions rather than allowing your emotions to control you. It allows you to focus on you and display higher levels of emotional intelligence. Question 2, what exactly is mental resilience? So we discussed that there is no real definition, but the one that I've come up with that I feel really captures it is the elasticity of your mind. Remember that analogy of the rubber band? It's how far you can be stretched and then go back to your normal shape. And then over time, as you stretch and grow and go back and grow some more, your mind will expand and grow over time. Question 3, the difference between stress and pressure. So we all know the negative consequences that stress brings us, and we don't want to be there. Where we want to be is that point between slightly uncomfortable and comfortable. That's the point where we can reframe and make pressure a good part of our life. Some of the benefits we discussed were increased motivation and drive, excitement and commitment, but also good healthy doses of fear and anxiety. Remember my unusual thought process there, and if you think kind of the same way, maybe adopt that principle of thinking that anxiety and fear does not need to be bad. It can be good for you. And I was also discussing question 4, why pressure can be good for you, because those healthy doses drive you on and give you that excitement, that fulfillment in life. And then what are the steps? So question 5, what are the steps to start taking to start your journey to mental resilience. So we spoke about that. We spoke about self-awareness, awareness of consequences, focusing on everything that's good, and then being completely present. Like I said, those questions I will put in the show notes because I feel like they're such important questions. And we spoke about how quickly you can go through that process in a really high pressured environment. Stop the stress, take control of your emotions, and start being seen as a leader. Now, before I sign out, I want to leave you with this little gem, something that's had one of the biggest impacts on my life. That you can let stress and pressure control your life, or you can control them. Remember what we spoke about. Don't be a slave to your emotions. Control your emotions. Stress is something that you want to avoid, but sometimes it's difficult and you slip back there. It's not an easy journey, this mental resilience journey. It's difficult. Sometimes there's things that are beyond our control and it's hard to manage. And we do go to that point of stress. But it's how we bounce back. Remember elasticity. It's how we bounce back to the point where we're normal that allows us to grow. And the main gems, this is something that made a huge difference in my life. Changing the language. I literally stopped using the word stress. I just took it out of my vocabulary. Even when people around me are going, yeah, this is really stressful, I just refused to use that word. Instead, I always look to reframe about how I can make a positive impact in that situation. And if you do the same thing, and it's difficult, just refuse to use the word stress. Only look at pressure in a good way. Reframe for the positive, and you will see how much of a difference it makes in your life. I hope that this episode has had a positive impact on you, because it's had a positive impact on me and it means a lot to me. If you are someone who loves personal development, loves growth, and wants to stop managing their life and start leading their life, then I have a whole series of blogs and tools about how you can do that. The website, so pmgrowth.co, it will be in the show notes. You can go there, you can read all the free content and value that I put out there in my blogs. And if any form of my blogs or my podcast has helped you or had a positive impact on you in any way, I would love if you could hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends and your colleagues and your family, because it really helps me. It helps me share the positive message which goes along with my purpose. Thank you very much for listening. This is JT signing out.